The day was bright on Aurelia, though its sky was not like Earth's. Instead of soft blue, the heavens glowed in soft shades of gold and silver. Two suns hung high above, their light catching on the palace towers until the whole city seemed to sparkle. Ethan Cole stepped out of the sleek silver transport and took a deep breath. The air smelled different here, sweet, almost like flowers, but with something strange under it, a scent he could not name. He adjusted the collar of his formal jacket and tried not to stare too much at the city around him. Today was important. He was part of the first human delegation to set foot on the planet Aurelia. Back on Earth, people had been waiting for months to see if humans and Aurelians could become allies. Ethan was the youngest envoy chosen for the mission, and while that made him proud, it also made his heart beat a little too fast. The Aurelians were already waiting for them at the palace gates. They were tall, with graceful movements and skin that shimmered like the surface of water under sunlight. Some had colors of pale silver, others gold or soft green, as if they had been painted by nature itself. Their clothing was made of smooth, flowing fabrics that caught the light in gentle waves. A grand figure stood in the center, the High Chancellor of Aurelia. Beside him stood someone smaller, yet striking in her own way. She had the same shimmering skin, but her eyes were bright violet, deep and curious. A crown of thin crystal rested lightly on her head. Ethan guessed this was Princess Leora, the daughter of the High Chancellor. The human envoys and Aurelian leaders exchanged polite bows as the translator softly echoed each word in both languages. Everything was going smoothly until it was Ethan's turn to step forward. The Chancellor spoke in a warm, formal voice, introducing him to the princess. Without thinking too much, Ethan did what he always did when meeting someone important on Earth. He extended his hand for a handshake. He smiled, trying to seem friendly and respectful. Leora tilted her head as if studying his hand. There was a pause. Ethan began to wonder if she had misunderstood the gesture. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her hand in his. The moment, their skin touched. Something strange happened. Leora's eyes widened and a faint shiver ran through her body. At first, Ethan thought maybe the air was cooler than he realized, but the shiver didn't stop. It grew into a trembling that seemed to pass through her whole frame. Her violet eyes locked onto his, filled with something he couldn't read. Surprise, fear, curiosity, all at once. The crowd noticed. Whispers began to ripple through the Aurelians gathered at the gates. The Chancellor's smile faltered, though his voice remained calm, as he urged the ceremony to continue. Leora let go of Ethan's hand, but for a second longer than needed. As if she wasn't ready to break the contact, Ethan stepped back, feeling unsure. Had he offended her? Had his handshake broken some rule? Or had something else happened? Something neither of them understood? The rest of the ceremony went on without trouble, but Ethan kept glancing at Leora. She stood beside her father, silent, her hands folded in front of her, but every now and then, her eyes found his again, holding that same strange look. After the greetings, the human envoys were led inside the palace. The halls were made of smooth crystal walls that glowed faintly, as if lit from within. The floor was cool under their steps, and the air carried a faint hum, like distant music. Ethan tried to pay attention as their guide explained the palace's history, but his thoughts kept going back to the handshake. In the evening, the envoys were given private rooms in the guest wing. Ethan was just about to remove his jacket when one of the palace aides appeared at his door. The aide's skin shimmered in soft silver tones, and his voice was polite but serious. "May I speak with you, Envoy Cole?" the aide asked. Ethan nodded. The aide stepped inside, lowering his voice. "It is rare for Aurelians to touch each other's hands," he explained. "Touch carries meaning here. It is not done without purpose." Ethan frowned. "I didn't mean any disrespect," he said quickly. It's a human greeting, a sign of trust. I believe you, the aide replied. But for the princess, to react as she did, that is unusual, even for us. You may wish to be careful. The aide bowed slightly and left, leaving Ethan with more questions than answers. That night, he found it hard to sleep. The soft glow of the room's walls and the faint hum of the palace only reminded him that he was far from home. And somewhere, in this vast building, was Princess Leora, who had shaken when he touched her hand. The next day, Ethan walked through the gardens with the other envoys before the next round of talks. The gardens were filled with plants that shimmered in the sunlight, their petals like pieces of glass. Strange birds with crystal-like wings moved between the branches, their calls echoing softly. A messenger approached Ethan quietly, slipping a small folded note into his hand. Inside, written in careful handwriting, were the words, "Meet me in the Garden of Starlight tonight." Leora Ethan read the note twice, his heart beating faster. He had no idea why she wanted to see him, but he knew he couldn't say no. That evening, when the moons of Aurelia hung low and pale over the palace, Ethan made his way to the Garden of Starlight. It was a place unlike anything he had seen before. The flowers glowed softly, casting light in every color across the path. The air was warm and the sound of water trickled somewhere nearby. Leora was already there, standing near a fountain shaped like a spiraling star. She looked different without the crown, her hair loose and shimmering in the moonlight. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say. "I need to understand," Leora continued. "This handshake. In your people's way, what does it mean?" Ethan smiled slightly. "It's just a greeting, a way to show trust. It means you don't mean harm. On Earth, it's very common." Leora looked at her hands, then back at him. "When you touched me, I felt something. It was like the ground under me moved. I have never felt it before." Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't know why it happened," he admitted. "But maybe we can find out." For a moment, they stood in silence, the glow of the garden flowers painting their faces in soft colors. Neither of them knew it yet, but the first step toward something much larger had already been taken, with a simple handshake. The next morning began with soft golden light spilling through the palace windows. Ethan woke early, his mind still busy with the memory of the meeting in the Garden of Starlight. Leora's words replayed again and again in his thoughts. I felt something. Like the ground moved. He wondered if it was only her imagination. But deep inside, he knew something unusual had happened. The human envoys gathered in the main hall for the day's schedule. It was a place of high crystal walls and carved pillars that seemed to glow from the inside. Servants moved quietly, carrying trays of clear fruit and cups of shining liquid. The air smelled faintly of honey and cool rain. The Chancellor entered, with the Aurelian's advisors, followed by Princess Leora. She was dressed in flowing silver fabric that caught the light with every step. Ethan tried not to stare, but when her eyes briefly met his, he felt a small spark of awareness, as if she knew he was thinking about the night before. The day's work began with discussions about trade routes and cultural exchanges. Ethan took notes, listened to translators, and spoke only when asked. Yet, in every pause, he felt her presence across the room, and once or twice, he caught her watching him. During the midday break, Ethan stepped out into one of the open balconies for fresh air. The two suns shone over the city, making the rivers below look like threads of glass. He heard footsteps behind him. It was a palace aide, the same one who had warned him before. The aide spoke quietly. The princess's reaction yesterday has caused some questions in the court. Many saw it. Few understand it. Ethan frowned. Do they think I did something wrong? The aide tilted his head. Not wrong, but unusual. Touch between Aurelians is rare. It is more than politeness. It carries a bond. The stronger the reaction, the deeper the meaning. Ethan's curiosity grew. So her shaking? That means something to you? The aide hesitated. Perhaps. But you should ask her directly, only she knows what she felt. Before Ethan could reply, the aide bowed and left. That evening, Leora was not at the dinner reception. Ethan tried not to notice, but her absence left him restless. After the meal, as he walked through the quiet corridors toward his guest room, he heard a soft voice. Ethan. He turned to see Leora standing in the shadow of an archway. She motioned for him to follow her, and they moved silently through the halls until they reached a smaller courtyard, lit only by the moons. "I wanted to see you without all the court watching," she said. Ethan nodded. "You weren't at the dinner. Is everything all right?" She looked away for a moment. "My father thinks I should keep distance from you. He says it may prevent misunderstandings." Ethan sighed. "Because of what happened at the handshake?" "Yes," she admitted. "But it is not just that. I wanted to know more about you, and about your customs." They walked slowly along the edge of a quiet fountain. Leora asked about Earth, its oceans, forests, and skies. Ethan told her about blue mornings, the sound of rain on rooftops, and the taste of warm bread. She listened closely, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. When Ethan asked about Aurelia, she told him of floating gardens, silver-winged birds, and the great storms that painted the skies with moving colors. But when he asked about her reaction to his touch, she grew quiet. "I do not have the words for it," she said finally. "It was not pain. It was not fear. It was a pull, as if my heart was trying to speak before my mind understood." Ethan had no answer for that. The next day, an unusual event took place. During a ceremonial presentation in the palace's Hall of Waves, a large decorative beam loosened from its frame above the guests. It was not dangerous. It was light and meant only for display. But as it slid, Ethan instinctively stepped forward to help steady it. Before he could even react fully, Leora was at his side, her hand gripping his arm firmly. The moment she touched him, her fingers tightened, and he felt a faint tremor pass between them again. This time, she didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at him with the same searching expression she had in the garden. Several Aurelians nearby froze, watching the contact. A quiet murmur spread through the hall. Later, when Ethan returned to his quarters, a palace scientist arrived with a polite request. "For diplomatic health records," the scientist explained, "we would like a small sample of your genetic pattern." Ethan hesitated. "Is this standard?" "It is for new interspecies contacts," the scientist replied with a smile. "It helps us learn how to prevent illness between our peoples." With no reason to refuse, Ethan agreed. The scientist took a quick scan of his hand with a small crystal device and left. That evening, Leora stood on her balcony, looking over the twin moons. Her attendant entered quietly, holding a sealed report. "It is as you suspected," the attendant said softly. "Your neural resonance reacts unusually with human bioenergy, especially his." Leora's heart quickened. "So it is not only in my mind." "No," the attendant confirmed. "It is real. Perhaps more real than you know." Leora looked out at the glowing city, the thought settling in her mind like a quiet storm. From the moment she had touched Ethan's hand, her world had changed. The morning began with a soft mist over Aurelia's capital. The palace gardens shimmered as the sun slowly rose, catching droplets of dew on silver-green leaves. From his window, Ethan watched the city come alive, tall spires reflecting, the light, bridges stretching over crystal rivers, and sky gliders drifting silently above. He was trying to focus on the day's diplomatic schedule. but his thoughts kept drifting back to Princess Leora. Her words, her gaze, and that strange trembling whenever they touched. It was as if a quiet thread connected them now, one he didn't fully understand. The main hall of the palace was filled with activity when Ethan arrived. Today's talks would focus on shared technology and joint exploration missions. The Aurelians had brought delicate models of their ships, made of glowing crystal filaments. The humans had their own displays, small devices that projected maps of star routes and planetary data. Ethan was listening to a discussion about fuel efficiency when movement caught his eye. Across the hall, Leora entered, walking with calm grace. She wore a flowing dress of pale green that shimmered faintly like sunlight through water. She took her seat beside the Chancellor, but Ethan could feel her presence even from across the room. Every so often, their eyes met, just for a moment, before one of them looked away. Midway through the meeting, something unexpected happened. A ceremonial servant carrying a tray of delicate glass symbols stumbled over a loose fold in the carpet. The tray tilted, and the symbols began to slide. Instinctively, Ethan moved to help, stepping quickly toward the servant. The symbols clattered but did not break. Ethan caught two of them in his hands just in time. But before he could straighten, another hand closed firmly on his arm. It was Leora. Her touch was warm, and almost at once that now familiar sensation returned, a faint, steady tremor that seemed to pass between them. It was not unpleasant. In fact, it was strangely calming this time, as if her presence steadied him. Neither of them moved for a few seconds. The hall fell unusually quiet, and Ethan became aware that several Aurelians were watching them closely. Finally, Leora released his arm, her expression unreadable. The meeting continued, but Ethan could feel the air had changed. Later that afternoon, as he was reviewing documents in the guest wing, a knock came at the door. It was the palace scientist who had scanned his hand the day before. "Envoy Cole," the scientist said politely. "May I speak with you in private?" Ethan invited him in. The scientist placed a small crystal sphere on the table. Inside, faint lights swirled slowly. "I have completed the analysis of your bioenergy pattern," the scientist explained. "It is unusual." Ethan leaned forward. "Unusual how?" The scientist hesitated, as if choosing words carefully. "Our people's neural pathways operate in a resonance field, a kind of living energy. With most species, there is no reaction, but with you, and especially with the princess, there is an interaction, a strong one." "What kind of interaction?" Ethan asked. "When you make physical contact, your energy stabilizes hers, while hers amplifies yours. It is a loop, a balance. I have not seen this before." Ethan frowned. "So you're saying this shaking she feels, it's because of our energy?" "Partly," the scientist replied, "but it may be more than that. It may be something we do not yet understand." Before Ethan could ask more, the scientist gathered his device. "I must report this to the Chancellor, but I thought you should know." That evening, Ethan was walking through one of the quieter palace corridors when he heard a soft voice. "Ethan." He turned to see Leora standing near a tall, arched window, looking out at the moons. "I spoke to my attendant," she said as he approached. "I know what the scientists found." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think it means?" She turned to face him. "I think it means the first handshake was not an accident. Our worlds have been apart for all of history, yet when we touched, something old and deep recognized us." "That sounds like a story from a book," Ethan said with a faint smile. "Perhaps," she replied. "But sometimes stories are only truths waiting to be proven." They stood together by the window, watching the silver rivers below. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars fallen to the ground. The next morning, Leora approached Ethan in the gardens before the day's talks. I want to show you something, she said quietly. She led him through winding paths lined with glowing flowers until they reached a small, locked gate guarded by two palace sentries. With a nod from Leora, the gate opened, and they stepped inside. The place was unlike the rest of the gardens. Tall, crystal trees stood in a circle, their branches meeting high above to form a dome. At the center was a raised platform covered in intricate carvings. "This is the Garden of Stars," Leora explained. "Only the royal family may enter. It holds memories of our oldest stories." She guided him to the platform. On its surface was a map, not of Aurelia's own sky, but of stars far away. In the center, two spiraling patterns joined into one. "This," she said, pointing, "is a mark of the star bond. The old belief says that one day, someone from another world will share a connection with an Aurelian, a bond that will unite their peoples." Ethan studied the carving. "And you think this is about us?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know the feeling when I touched your hand, and I know I have never felt it with anyone else." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "If it's true, then what happens next?" She gave a small smile. "Then we find out together." Neither of them noticed that, high above in the branches, a small sensor device had begun to glow, silently recording their presence. The day after their visit to the Garden of Stars, the palace felt different to Ethan. There was still the same golden light pouring through tall crystal windows, the same soft hum in the air, and the same calm voices of diplomats echoing in the halls. But he noticed more than before. Guards seemed to linger longer near him. Court advisors whispered in corners when he walked past. And though Princess Leora greeted him politely during the morning talks, Ethan could feel that others were watching their every word. During the midday break, Leora approached him quietly. Her voice was low. "Meet me tonight after the evening meal. I will take you somewhere few are allowed to go." Ethan nodded, though a part of him wondered if it was safe. Still, curiosity, and something deeper, pushed him to agree. That night, the palace corridors were quieter than usual. Most of the guests had gone to their rooms, and the great halls were lit only by soft moonlight through tall windows. Leora appeared from a side passage, her silver robe hooded. Without speaking, she motioned for Ethan to follow. They passed through narrow hallways and down winding staircases. At the bottom, a heavy door blocked the way, carved with shapes of stars and waves. Leora pressed her hand to a glowing panel, and the door slid open with a low hum. Inside was a vast, dimly lit chamber, the ancient archives. Ethan's eyes widened. Rows upon rows of crystal shelves stretched into the distance, each holding thin slabs of etched glass. Strange glowing symbols floated above certain sections, and faint streams of light moved across the floor like tiny rivers. "This," Leora said softly, "is where our oldest records are kept. Some are older than the palace itself." She led him deeper, to a raised table in the center of the room. There, she placed her hand on a small control crystal. The table lit up, projecting a large star map into the air above them. The map was beautiful, thousands of tiny points of light connected by faint lines, with Aurelia's sun glowing at the center. But what caught Ethan's attention was a spiral symbol on the far edge of the map. It matched the one he had seen carved into the Garden of Stars. Leora's voice was steady but quiet. "This symbol marks the star bond prophecy. It is said that an Aurelian of royal blood will one day meet a traveler from far away. Their touch will awaken a link strong enough to bridge two worlds." Ethan studied the glowing spiral. "It sounds like a legend." "Perhaps it is," Leora admitted. "But many Aurelians believe it. And now, after we met, the court wonders if it is you." Ethan gave a small laugh, though not without unease. "I'm just a junior envoy. I'm not some hero from an old story. Leora looked at him for a moment before speaking. Do you think stories come from nothing? Many are, born from truth, just hidden in time. Ethan's gaze wandered to a set of crystal slabs on the nearby shelf. The symbols on them seemed to move faintly, as though alive. What do these say? He asked. Leora stepped closer, reading the flowing shapes. They tell of the last time an Aurelian touched someone from beyond our skies. It was more than 1,000 years ago. The record says the meeting changed both peoples forever, but it also warns that such a bond will bring challenges. What kind of challenges? Ethan asked. Leora's voice lowered. Fear, division, not everyone will welcome change. Before Ethan could respond, a soft sound broke the stillness, the faint echo of footsteps. Leora quickly touched the control crystal, and the star map faded. She led Ethan into a narrow passage between tall shelves, their crystal surfaces cool to the touch. Through the gap, Ethan saw two court advisors enter the chamber. They spoke in low voices, one saying, "If the princess spends more time with him, the prophecy may become self-fulfilling. The chancellor will not risk that." Ethan and Leora waited in silence until the advisors left. When they stepped back into the main room, Leora's face was tense. "They are watching more closely now," she said. "Then why bring me here tonight?" Ethan asked. "Because," she replied, "if this bond is real, we must understand it before others decide for us." As they left the archives, they entered a tall chamber lined with ancient murals. One painting showed two figures, one Aurelian, one with features unlike any Ethan had seen, standing hand in hand as waves of light spread around them. Ethan stopped, staring at it. Yes, Leora said. "The oldest image of the star bond. Our historians never learned who the other figure was, only that they came from a distant world. The resemblance was faint, but Ethan could almost imagine the unknown figure as a human." By the time they returned to the upper halls, the palace was silent. At the door to the guest wing, Leora paused. "There will come a day soon," she said, "when my father will ask you questions. He will want to know if this connection is real. If you say no, things may return to normal. If you say yes, nothing will be the same." Ethan met her eyes. "And what do you want me to say?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she gave a small, almost sad smile. "I want the truth." She turned and walked away, her silver robe flowing behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the quiet hall. That night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his room. He thought of the prophecy, the map, the mural, and the way her hand felt in his. Maybe it was only chance. Maybe it was fate. Either way, he knew the court's eyes were on them, and the choice ahead would change everything. The morning sun rose over Aurelia, casting soft light on the palace's tall towers and shining rivers. Ethan woke with a feeling of both hope and worry. He knew the days ahead would test him in ways he did not yet understand. At breakfast, the atmosphere was tense. News had spread quickly. A mysterious communications blackout was affecting both human and Aurelian networks. Messages between the two species could not get through. No one knew why. The court whispered of sabotage, though no proof was found. The High Chancellor called for calm. "We must protect our people and our guests," he said. "Until we understand what is happening, all foreign envoys will remain under guard." His words were clear. No one was to move freely. Ethan felt the weight of the guard's eyes wherever he went. The palace that had once felt full of light now felt like a cage. But Leora would not be kept apart. That evening, as guards stood watch near the guest wing, she appeared at Ethan's door. Her violet eyes shone with determination. "You must come with me," she said quietly. Ethan frowned. "The Chancellor's orders. I can't just leave." She smiled softly. Some things are more important than rules. Come. Without waiting, she took his hand, the familiar but still strange feeling, passing between them. Ethan followed, careful to avoid the guards on patrol. They moved through quiet corridors and up winding stairs to the palace's highest observatory, a dome of glass and crystal that looked out over the stars. Inside, the room was filled with instruments and glowing displays. Leora approached a large screen showing their star system. "We tracked the blackout from here," she explained. "But it is not sabotage. It is a natural cosmic wave passing through." Ethan stared. "A cosmic wave?" "Yes," Leora said. "It interacts with the energies of both our species. It could cause damage if it grows stronger." As they watched, the wave's patterns rippled across the screen, bursts of energy flowing like a slow storm. Ethan looked at Leora. "Is that why you shook when we first met?" "The wave," she nodded. "Yes, the wave reacts to your energy, and mine, together." They stood close, the silence filled only by the hum of the machines. Ethan realized the connection between them was no longer just a mystery. It was a key. Suddenly, the observatory's systems flickered and dimmed. The wave's energy was increasing. "We need to stop this," Ethan said. Leora's eyes were steady. "We can. Together." She reached out and took his hand firmly. At once, Ethan felt warmth spread through him, stronger than before. The trembling returned. But this time it was steady and controlled, like a rhythm. Energy from the cosmic wave seemed to flow through their joined hands, calming and balancing the disturbance. Outside the observatory, lights in the city blinked and flickered. Inside, the wave slowed, the storm on the screen settling into calm ripples. They held their hands together until the last flicker passed. Then, slowly, Leora released Ethan's hand. Both were breathing hard, their eyes wide with the power they had just shared. "This is real," Ethan whispered. "Yes," Leora said softly. "Our bond is stronger than I thought." The next morning, word spread quickly through the palace. The court had witnessed strange energy surges during the blackout, but none understood what had calmed the storm. When the Chancellor heard what Ethan and Leora had done, he summoned them, both. "You have demonstrated something no one could explain," he said gravely. "This bond may be our greatest hope." But the advisors were divided. Some praised the connection between human and Aurelian. Others feared what it might mean for tradition and power. Despite the mixed feelings in the court, Ethan and Leora grew closer. They shared long talks about their worlds, their fears and hopes. The bond between them was no longer just a strange reaction. It was a bridge. Together, they planned how humans and Aurelians could work side by side, learning from each other. Their handshake had started it all, but now it was something much bigger. One evening, as they stood on the palace balcony watching the twin moons, Ethan asked, "Do you think the prophecy is true?" Leora smiled, her hand in his. "I believe it is," she said, "and I believe we are ready." The stars above twinkled gently. Two worlds once apart now stood together, beginning a new chapter, hand in hand. The palace was alive with energy and quiet excitement. News of Ethan and Leora's bond had spread through Aurelia and beyond. The people were divided, some filled with hope, others with doubt. In the grand hall, a special ceremony was planned. The High Chancellor had called all the court, diplomats, and guests to witness a moment that might change the future. Ethan felt a mix of nerves and calm as he stood beside Leora. She looked radiant in a dress woven from soft silver threads, her violet eyes shining with determination. The Chancellor's voice echoed through the hall. "We gather today to recognize a bond that promises peace and unity between our peoples." He gestured toward Ethan and Leora. "Let them demonstrate the star bond that was foretold in our ancient prophecies." A hush fell over the crowd. Ethan stepped forward and reached out his hand. Leora took it gently, their fingers interlocking. At first, nothing happened. Then a soft glow began to rise from their joined hands, warm, steady, and bright, without any harsh light. The glow spread slowly, wrapping around them like a calm wave. The palace walls hummed softly, and the air seemed filled with hope. People watched in awe as the bond between human and Aurelian grew stronger. Whispers filled the hall, some of wonder, others of acceptance. The Chancellor spoke again, his voice firm but kind. This bond is more than tradition or legend. It is a living connection, a bridge between worlds. He turned to Ethan. Will you stand with us as a friend and ally to Aurelia? Ethan nodded, his voice clear. I will. Leora smiled, squeezing his hand. And I will stand with Earth. The crowd erupted in applause. In the days that followed, new agreements were made. Humans and Aurelians began sharing knowledge, technology, and culture. Schools opened where children of both worlds learned side by side. Scientists worked together to explore distant stars. Ethan and Leora became symbols of hope, proof that different worlds could unite through understanding and trust. One evening, they stood together on the palace balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Ethan looked at Leora and said softly, Do you remember the first time we shook hands? She laughed gently. Yes, you had no idea what you were starting. Neither did I, he said, but I'm glad we took that first step. She rested her head on his shoulder. The future is ours to build. And so, with a simple handshake that shook more than hands, it shook the very foundation of two worlds. Humanity and Aurelia began a new journey together.